But of course, that brings me to my number one pick. The best Marvel reimagination was, of course, Woof Woof! Hey guys, it's me Marcus, aka the Mad Dog, and we're back with another video. Yes, I'm a self-confessed ultimate Marvel apologist, and I understand that people who didn't grow up reading these titles think that they're pretty much shit. So yeah, even though it may have fallen short for the most part, these 10 characters benefited the most from being in the ultimate Marvel universe. Now before we get into this top 10 list, there is one very important disclaimer that I have to say, and I hope that you all listen to. I am in no way saying that the ultimate versions of these characters are better than the 616 counterparts. All that I'm saying is that they changed something different to them so that they gave us a new look on these characters, and maybe there was something interesting there. Number 10, I've got Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane. Yeah, I'm getting the cheating in early on this video. But even though I haven't read a lot of Silver Age comics, to me it always seemed the case that Mary Jane was this beautiful woman who was interested in Peter Parker, but she didn't know that he was Spider-Man for the most part of their relationship. And then you had Gwen Stacy, who was a beautiful girl who was interested in Peter Parker, but she didn't know that he was Spider-Man for the majority of his relationship. But in Ultimate Spider-Man, Mary Jane was pretty much the textbook girl next door because of the fact that she did live next door to him, and also they were there from the beginning. She learned very early on that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, and that played a much more interesting dynamic into their relationship. And then you had Gwen Stacy, who was introduced quite a bit later, and she was more edgy, she was more of an alternative girl, so already you had a personality contrast between these two characters. But still, this video isn't about which is better, it's just which of the changes that made the most impact to the character overall. We got more time to see how the Captain Stacy stuff affected Gwen, and you also had it so that we saw the formation stages of Peter and Mary Jane's relationship in a much more earnest and in a more realistic way, to the point that we believe that Mary Jane would actually want to be with somebody like Peter Parker. Number 9, even though most of you probably already hate this video, but it's Hawkeye and Black Widow. Yeah, again, we're going with a double whammy because I feel like what changed with these characters was pretty much the same between the both of them, so it isn't really fair to weigh up one more so than the other. Now, I remember not a lot of people liked Hawkeye's costume change, but for me, I thought it made more sense for what that character is. They felt like they were more integrated in S.H.I.E.L.D. You got the sense that they were government agents that were just trying to do missions rather than trying to be superheroes. And even though everything past Mark Millar's Ultimate series isn't really worth your time, I do think what they did with both Black Widow and Hawkeye and making them a more spy espionage kind of team was something that the Marvel Universe probably overlooked for a little bit too long. Although yeah, I can't lie, I'm always going to love Hawkeye's original costume design. Number 8, and I'm getting ready to get swamped with dislikes for this one, but hear me out. I've got Magneto. Before you all hate me too much, let me ask you a question. In the regular X-Men continuity, who would you say is the most fearsome bad guy that they could go up against? You've got people like Apocalypse, Mr. Sinister, you've even got the Hellfire Club. Whereas in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, this may be because of the fact that they didn't flesh out a lot of the other villains, it's primarily just Magneto. That's what Magneto should be. Magneto should be the big bad guy for the X-Men, and in the Ultimate Universe, they went for that. This is Magneto if he decided one day to just say fuck it and use his full potential for his crusade for mutant equality. Look, Magneto is probably my favourite villain within all of comics, and there were some things that they did with Magneto in the Ultimate Universe that I didn't enjoy, that I can't really get behind, and I don't think he's ever going to top his 616 counterpart. All I'm saying is I get the feeling that if I took my watch off and I didn't have any fillings in my teeth and I ran up and I punched Magneto square in his face, but then I said I'm a mutant and I'm sorry about that, he'll probably forgive me. Whereas Ultimate Magneto, yeah, that dude had fucked me up. It's kind of weird having Magneto on my list because the reason why I like him so much as a villain is because you get the sense that he never wants to be a villain. It's just he's doing what he feels is right in his crusade for mutant equality. Whereas Ultimate Magneto is pretty much a terrorist that just wants to cause as much harm to humans as possible. In essence, I always treat the Ultimate Universe kind of like a long strand Elseworlds tale. So having that Magneto who's willing to go further, that is more violent, is more sadistic and cynical, I really like seeing that depth to him. And even though Ultimatum is a comic book event that's so shit that even an ultimate Marvel apologist like myself can't really justify it, the actions that Magneto took during that event showed that there was a clear distinction between himself and his regular Marvel counterpart. And even though it wasn't perfect and it made a few missteps, this was a very interesting take on the character for the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Number 7, we've got Daredevil. Now yes, Daredevil to me is the greatest Marvel character of all time. And you'll notice that I said Daredevil and not Ultimate Daredevil, but he's still going to make it onto this list. That's because of the fact that I just liked how much of a dick he was to Spider-Man. Like, he really didn't want to be in the same team as him, but he understood that he needed to work with him, and in the Marvel Universe, Daredevil and Spider-Man are quite a good duo when they get together. Sure, they don't always see eye to eye, but in the Ultimate Universe, you got the sense that he knew that Spider-Man was a kid and he wasn't going to take any of his shit. But for somebody who has been a big-time Daredevil fan for so many years, and also a massive fan of Bendis' run of Daredevil, it was fun to see how Bendis changed that up in the Ultimate version of Matt Murdock. Number 6, and this one's going to throw you for for a loop because I've got Miles Morales. Yo, now before you start commenting, just two quick things. Firstly, I'm known for cheating in these lists. And two, what I mean here is that I preferred Miles Morales when he was in the Ultimate Marvel universe than compared to when he was integrated into the 616. So even though it isn't a reimagining, because obviously you can't reimagine a character that didn't exist before then, it is still the image of Miles Morales that I prefer. Actually, I don't know who I'm kidding, someone's still going to feel the need to correct me in the comments. But for me, when Miles Morales was getting introduced, when he was taking the mantle from Peter Parker, I feel like that's when we got the most pure version of this character that we could get. But I feel like since he's been integrated into the main Marvel universe, we just haven't really seen the same Miles Morales, and for me personally, I think I preferred the original. He wasn't as squeaky clean as he is now. I felt like he was more willing to get into a fight and he was more willing to take risks. Whereas for the most part, I feel like since he's been included into the 616 universe, we've pretty much just got Spider-Boy rather than the Spider-Man that we saw when Miles Morales was in the Ultimate Universe. Number 5, I've got Colossus. Admittedly, there wasn't too many reimaginings that came from Ultimate X-Men that I felt really did anything justice to those characters. Now, Colossus is my favourite member of the X-Men, but admittedly, I think his origins are a little bit too cookie cutter. You've got this absolute man-mountain that can turn himself into steel, that grew up in some kind of Russian farm, but he discovered his powers when he was stopping someone getting run over from a tractor or something like that. The Ultimate X-Men version of Colossus was involved in this Russian underworld that I just thought was really interesting. And for me, I feel like they're the best characters that work well within the X-Men, because obviously you've got a character that hadn't really ever felt some kind of stability, but you find it within the X-Men family. And even though I wasn't really the biggest fan of the hints that he fancied Wolverine, which I just thought was a little bit silly, that change to Colossus's origins I thought was ballsy. I thought it added a little bit of extra depth to this character, and it was something that I personally really enjoyed. Number 4, I've got Sue Storm. If we talk about Ultimate Marvel titles that didn't do a lot right, then Ultimate Fantastic Four is probably going to be top of that list. But even though Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's original run is legendary and it's something that people still enjoy reading today, I do think that the Ultimate Marvel universe gave Sue Storm more of a platform and more of a spotlight from the very beginning. In the original book, it feels like she's there just because of the fact that it says 4 in the title, and because Reed Richards keeps shouting, "Damn it, Sue!" so they needed somebody there called Sue. She's more so just the Invisible Woman than she is Sue Storm, whereas in the Ultimate Marvel universe, they gave her a bit more of a personality. She was a valuable member of that team from the beginning, more so than just being Reed Richards' girlfriend. And they just gave her more attention because in the original run, it felt like she was only there if they needed to drum up some kind of drama between Reed Richards and Namor. As well, a lot of people tend to forget this, but in the original couple of issues, they were still figuring out what Sue's powers were. So originally, the force field thing, it was a bit limited in what it could do, and I don't even know if that was introduced from the very beginning, but because now that character's been established for some time, Ultimate Marvel could just take it as she is with the development that she's had in those 40 or so years and sort of go back to the beginning and give her a bit more chance to shine from there. So in the Ultimate Marvel universe, yes, she was invisible, but she still had a presence. Number 3 is going to be Thor. Again, main universe Thor doesn't need to worry. I'm not saying that this is the best rendition of this character that we've ever had, but in adapting him for modern times, I felt like they introduced a few elements that were interesting and made it fun to read this character in contrast to his original. That's what this list is looking at, not who did what best, but what made it the most interesting read. And if anything, I felt like this version of Thor was actually ahead of its time because of the fact that YouTube and social influencers didn't exist at the time when the Ultimates was coming out. But Thor still had that cult following, and you had people denying if he was who he actually said he is. He also had a great costume redesign that I felt made him much more approachable, down to earth, and made a lot more sense. And the updated look to the hammer made him much more formidable, and I think that if you've got the God of Thunder on your team, the one thing that you should look is formidable. Number 2 is Kraven the Hunter. Now this is a weird one because of the fact that I felt like Kraven the Hunter has kind of maxed out his potential in the modern Marvel universe. Ever since Kraven's last hunt, it feels like nobody can top this character, nobody can really bring anything new to him or change him for the better. Ultimate Marvel's been the first time that this character had an opportunity to reinvent himself, and he did it quite well. So the core of Kraven's character is still there. That belief that he needs to become the ultimate hunter is following him everywhere he goes, but he's this TV personality that's got his own show. It's very reminiscent of that early 2000s when you had stuff like Fear Factor and Jackass, and I just love that they managed to modernize this character without really taking too much away from who he is. You had those hints that maybe everything wasn't entirely there with him, but I like the fact that he was a more public figure. It was the next logical step because in previous iterations of the character, Kraven was pretty much like a circus act that would tour the country and stuff like that, but now he was an international celebrity. I thought it was a really cool dynamic, and for once it gave us a fresh take on this character that felt like he'd peaked and established exactly who he was to the point where nobody could do anything with him. Before we get into my number one pick, we're just going to go through some honourable mentions, the first of which is going to be Deadpool. I don't actually think that the changes to the character was any better. I just like the fact that he was there without being in absolutely every other title that was going on at the same time. There were some pretty cool changes to Rhino as well. I like the mechanized suit, even though I do also like the original. Spider-Woman, mostly just for the costume. I know that obviously there was a whole clone thing with it, but I just felt like this was a really cool redesign. And of course, I think that the changes that they made to Peter Parker really made him accessible to a newer audience like myself. But of course, that brings me to my number one pick. The best Marvel reimagination was, of course, Nick Fury. Yes, we're talking about the Samuel Jacksonification of this character to the point where this was the only person who could play Nick Fury when they eventually went to cast him. And yes, even though this may just seem like a cosmetic change, I like that they made Nick Fury just seem more cool. He would sit and talk with the team, he was cool, but at the same time, he still had that Nick Fury sensibility that we all know and love. For people like myself who use the Ultimate Marvel Universe to get into comics, this pretty much is the Nick Fury that we know when you couple that with the MCU. And even though characters like Miles have stepped out from the Ultimate Universe into the modern one, I think Nick Fury is the only character that has had such an impact through his Ultimate reimagining that that's the one that you normally think of when you go to think about this character. And when you think about the Ultimate Marvel Universe as a whole, there's not many others that you can really say that about. But that's my list, and if you're an Ultimate Marvel apologist like me, leave a comment down below on which character you felt benefited most from the Ultimate reimagining. As well, if you disagree with this list or you disagree with anyone's comments, just try and be civil. I'm trying to create a positive vibe throughout this channel, and I'm just trying to have a good time. It's just comics, don't take it too seriously. But if you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you didn't, why did you get this far? Subscribe if you're new here and click the bell notification so that you don't miss a video. And also, if you could share this video where you can so that we can start a discussion, check out my links down below, and I've also got a tip jar if you do want to support the channel. And why not check out some of my other videos? But until next time, just make sure that you stay safe, stay reading the best books that you can find, and stay mad all you dogs. Woof woof! See you at the next video.